What's going on, everybody? My name is Crypto Corey. I want to thank you for joining me today. This video, I'm talking about Bitcoin. And if you've been paying attention to the markets are dumping. Bitcoin just made a new all-time low since the previous bull market. It now has dropped down to like 16,000. It's probably going to drop lower. We are looking for it to hit a $10,000 to $14,000 range. But now we've got people coming on saying Bitcoin's going to crash and go to zero, and they're betting their money on the gold, they're betting their money on the dollar and other investments, and they're calling crypto a scam. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a quick explanation of what Bitcoin is and why you should be buying Bitcoin right now, and what's the fundamental purpose of Bitcoin, because it's not just for you to get rich quick type thing. So if you would please also click a like in this video and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell notification if you want to get more updates. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. Let's talk about Bitcoin. Let's talk about the dollar. We're going to compare the two. So first of all, it's not true that people who buy Bitcoin are buying it just to get rich quick. So people buying Bitcoin, for the most part, the people I know, which is a bunch of people, all of them are buying Bitcoin for the same purpose. It's to long-term accumulate Bitcoin to grow their wealth. That's what they're doing with it. No different than what you would do if you're buying gold, or if you're investing into your 401k, or if you're investing into your Roth IRA. It's just, what is the asset that you're investing your money into over the long term to grow this wealth that you're trying to achieve. So Bitcoin versus the dollar. So this is what I've been hearing a lot lately, is Bitcoin's going to zero, and that's going to be based upon its evaluation against the US dollar. So we're going to discuss why Bitcoin, first of all, is not going to zero, and then second of all, why it will continue to grow against the dollar over the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 150 years. So first of all, we're going to describe what's the difference between Bitcoin and the US dollar. So first of all, the US dollar is printed. It's basically fiat money. So we print this dollar, and what ends up happening is we inject this into the economy by printing this dollar. Now, this dollar is not just printed physically; it's printed digitally. It's traded amongst the banks. You also have to pay this money back to the Federal Reserve, which is the people who control the money. Now, the interest that you have to pay back to the Federal Reserve is then turned into debt, or it's turned into inflation on top of the dollar over time. So basically, you're going to keep printing this dollar, you're going to keep inflating the supply. Now, some of the supply will be quote unquote burned off, or it'll just be old money, it'll die off, someone will lose it, it'll get torn up, it'll get burned in a fire, whatever. Someone sends it to an account and the account never gets touched and it gets lost, or whatever. So basically, there's lots of reasons you can burn the dollar away. And then you grow the supply of dollars. Now, this is an overall supply of dollars. So you have X number of dollars that you have a supply of, and you increase and decrease that supply by either the destruction of the dollar or the creation of the dollar. So our supply of dollars on average annually, and this is over, like, if we're talking like the next 30 years, you're wondering how much will the dollar inflate in supply? The answer is it will inflate in supply about 3 to 4% annually on average per year. So the supply grows. So as the supply grows of an asset, of an item, of anything, the demand for that item goes down. The reason is because the population of demand, people are satisfied because they have it, therefore because they have their demands met, that demand is less. There's less people demanding more of it. So the value of it will over time go down. Now, if the population grows faster than the supply, you might actually have a higher demand because you have an increased demand due to the overall people creating that demand. But as we know of right now, the increased supply of the dollars has increased dramatically over the supply of the people in the economy, the demand for said dollar, the humans, people wanting dollars. So 3%, the dollar inflates on average 3% annually. Obviously right now it's been a lot. It's been almost double digits. It's been 9%. It's now down to 8%. Hopefully it's about 7. They're trying to get it back down to like 2 to 4% or something like that. But I don't know how far they're going to get it down, but we're gonna cover what the Fed's doing in a minute. So next, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin, and also just lastly to describe what the dollar is, fiat currency dollar. It is backed by the federal government. So first of all, this is a fiat centralized currency that is used. So it grows the supply grows by 3% annually, and it's valued against items like milk, bread, cars, houses, Pokemon cards, stocks, companies, whatever. It's valued against those things. So we denominate our lives in the US dollar inside the United States. So, and it's backed by the federal government. It's backed by people with guns. That's the people who control your life, the people with the guns, the people that we elect into office. Those are the people who control the money supply. Now, that's the system we're in. What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a digital currency similar to how we can look at the US dollar on a screen. It's got a digital side to it, but it's also got a physical side to it. So what Bitcoin is, it is a solely digital, people can call it a currency, people call it an asset, people call it digital gold, but whatever you want to describe it, it has a supply. That supply grows annually. Now, that supply with the US dollar grows by the decisions of the Federal Reserve. So the feds, they're the ones who decide whether to increase or decrease the printing, the money supply of the US dollar. In Bitcoin, the money supply is predetermined by an algorithm. So this is a countdown algorithm, this specifically for Bitcoin. And as currently, the inflation rate right this second, as I think like 1.75 or 1.74%. So it's less than 2% right now. And every 4 years, the algorithm rolls over that half of the supply to be cut and reduced, and that supply injected into people via now the people who get this are going to be people who are mining Bitcoin. You get your Bitcoin through mining. This isn't the government just passing out money. This is you using electricity and hardware to mine the coin. So as of right now, the inflation rate, the amount that you can mine right now against the total supply is about 1.75, less than 2% right now. After the halving every 4 years, a predetermined algorithm, the supply inflation will drop to 0.88%, less than 1%. So the inflation on Bitcoin in, I think it's like late 2023, it's 2024. So I think it's like May 2024, the supply increase, the inflation of Bitcoin will then drop from less than 2% to less than 1%. All right, currently right now, the US dollar inflation rate is anywhere between 5 and 8% right now. I mean, we'll find out when they give us more updates, but it has been up to 9%, but on average it's 3 to 4%. So 3 to 4% for the US dollar, and that goes up and down depending upon the decisions of the Fed, versus Bitcoin, which is right now at 2%, it's going to go down to less than 1%, and that is a predetermined algorithm that will never stop. That predetermined algorithm is set in stone. The US dollar supply has no end in sight for the inflation that will occur for the US dollar. It is all determined by the Federal Reserve and the US government, the people we elect, the people elect put into those places also. So it's not just you electing the person who decides that. You elect a guy who then makes an executive decision on who makes these monetary decisions on your behalf, we the people, right? So basically that's what the fiat system does. With Bitcoin, there is a fixed supply. There is a predetermined algorithmic fixed supply of 21 million Bitcoin. That means by the year 2140, the total inflation rate of Bitcoin will cease to exist, and the total supply of Bitcoin will be set at 21 million Bitcoin. So, and that is after every 4 years, the total inflation supply of Bitcoin is cut in half. So if it's, let's say, 2%, now, and the next halving after 4 years is 1%, and then the next halving 4 years after that is 0.5%, and the next halving after that is 25, 0.25, like it just goes down and down and down and down until 2140, and the total amount of Bitcoin that has been mined with hardware. So basically what we're looking at fundamentally, this is the fundamentals of Bitcoin versus the US dollar. Bitcoin has a lower inflation rate that is predetermined by an algorithm that is set that you cannot change, as opposed to the fiat system is the federal government printing money at will or halting money at will. So you would think at some point, the Federal Reserve could just decide, let's just not print money anymore. We won't increase this, manually. So Bitcoin's predetermined. So what if we just decide to stop printing money altogether, right? So then now inflation's gone. The Federal Reserve fixed inflation. Boom. The US dollar soars and it wins. Bitcoin is going to crash and go to zero. Well, so when the Federal Reserve stops printing money, when the Federal Reserve does things like when they create inflation like they have to fix the inflation. Well, the first way that they could fix the inflation is by halting the production of money. Stop printing money, stop handing money out like they did with the PPE. So stop making money for people and handing it out for no reason. Well, that doesn't necessarily fix the inflation rate, because other countries inflate their supply of money as well, and then the dollar has to compete against other assets and other currencies in the world. So other countries can inflate or have their deflationary or whatever the environment that they want to create, but they do that manually. So the reason why they won't halt the inflation, they won't stop printing money, is because governments want to spend money. And the amount of money that they spend is greater than the amount of money that they actually tax the citizen. So if you were to increase a budget for the federal spending budget, let's say you made it, how many trillions of dollars, but whatever you make it, it will cost more than that. The actual cost will be more than that. And they're printing off money anyways, so they just allocate some of that money to it anyways. They include it to the national debt. They print money. So because that they can't tax you enough to create as much as they want, to build as much as they want, they will print their own money, they will tax you, and then they'll basically increase the debt and decrease the value of the dollar over time. So what happens is, because of this inflation they're creating, the value of the dollar goes down and the value of the asset goes up, because how can you compete against the person printing the money? If you're the one printing the money, you can't compete against that if you're not the one printing the money that people are using. So they can use their money for whatever they want. People are just going to start asking for more money because they're greedy and they want to get more money, right? But the government's the one creating this problem. So major corporations, big pharma, big tech, big whatever, they're the ones that are upping their cost, upping their prices, but they're doing this because the federal government is printing more money and giving it to them. So it starts with the federal government. It starts with the people printing the money. It's not the evil corporations, who are evil, but it is the federal government who feeds the monsters. I mean, that's the truth. So, and I believe I'm a capitalist. I'm a true capitalist, but the type of capitalism we have currently is fed by the federal government and fed by special interest. That's just the truth of it. We have so much pork and fat that we put into our bills, and because of that, we have to print more money and we have to tax more people in order to create that. And this is by the big corporations that are paying off the politicians in order to make these policies. So, because we can't stop the inflation rate, because the government won't stop printing, they won't stop competing with other countries, they won't stop, stealing your money, they won't stop taxing you. Because of all of that, you know that if you create anything of any type of value that people adopt, and that a value over time grows, or the awareness of that value grows over time. Anytime that happens and the inflation rate is lower and the decision making and the value of that item increases over the dollar, which it has over the last since the creation of Bitcoin. Best performing asset in the world has been Bitcoin over the last 10-15 years. Like, look it up. Like, the regular stock markets, they don't want to talk about it because it's not in the stock market. But if you were to have bought Bitcoin during its creation, when it was just fractions of a penny, and you held on to just maybe $100 investment of fractions of a penny to today, you'd be a multi-millionaire. And the reason for that is because the inflation rate of Bitcoin goes down over time. It has a fixed money supply, predetermined, no government control. It is truly an algorithm. It is a asset for the people. Now, it is also, we'll go into a couple other things that Bitcoin is. So whenever you use your dollars, whenever you use your credit card, maybe not cash is king, right? But whenever you use your credit cards, you swipe that credit card for $5 to buy something, a portion of that money has to go to an intermediary in order to make that transaction. It's the legacy system. So you have 3 people involved in that transaction. You have the person making the payment, you have the person receiving the payment, and you have a middleman. This middleman is the person that is handling the transaction back and forth, and it is verifying and validating that this transaction is a good transaction. So that is done by an intermediary. We would call this Bank of America. We would call this Wachovia, whatever. Now, sometimes you have more than one bank involved, which everyone needs to get paid. Everyone needs a fee. So over time, when you're doing this, you have to charge a percentage of the cost of that item, not to mention it's being taxed, but a percentage cost of that item has to be put in order to satisfy the transaction cost and the banks who handle the transactions. With Bitcoin, it is a self-validating system. So what happens is you've got many computers all around the world. As long as the lights stay on, these computers keep running, right? And if some shut down, there's many more around. So as long as these servers, these computers, these people who are adding to the network continue to add to the network, then you can't stop the ability for this transaction to take place. And what the algorithm does is it does the transaction, it validates the transaction, and then transaction's over, and it charges a very minimal network fee. Now, it's not as fast as, let's say, like a Visa transaction. So using Bitcoin as just like a normal payment system, like if you were to buy groceries with it, just wouldn't make sense. Now, you can use what's called the Lightning Network, which does fix that problem. And if you use I think it's Cash App uses that system. So if you just have US dollars on Cash App, you're actually using the Bitcoin Lightning Network every time you make a transaction on your Cash App. And that's why you don't have as much of the fees as you do if you used a Visa card or something, because you're using a Bitcoin transaction and not a legacy-based Visa transaction. So, less inflation, limited supply, not controlled by a government, predetermined, and it is cheaper to make transactions. Oh, and another thing. So if you were to want to take, let's say, millions and millions of US dollars and you wanted to hide it or store it away somewhere, and you wanted it outside the US, you can't just go ship your money outside the US. You know, that's the federal government wants to know about that. You can't just go take it to a Swiss bank. Swiss bank, you have to hide it on your person. If you've ever seen The Wolf of Wall Street, they would take all of their money that they had in order to hide it and to protect themselves. They had to put it on people and duct tape it to people and put it in bags and try to, smuggle it into a country where they could store it away. So Bitcoin, that doesn't exist. Bitcoin, you can take billions and billions and billions of dollars. You can stick it on a tiny little flash drive and you can travel all around the world, and you can go and, use your Bitcoin in any country. You can convert it to any currency, and there's nothing stopping you. There's nothing stopping you. It is true freedom. It is decentralized currency. That's it. That is all my explanation. That's like 5 things right there that makes Bitcoin better than the US dollar. So I know that the prices are crashing. I know people are talking about this. So why should you buy Bitcoin right now when the price is cheap? The reason is because the fundamentals of Bitcoin are better than the fundamentals of the US dollar. Thank you for joining me. My name is Crypto Corey. You have a good day.